If you have any of these 6 on your resume, I'm going to advise you to remove it right away. Hi, I'm Shelley Piedmont, a former recruiter turned career coach, and I want you to thrive and not just survive your job. Resumes change over time, so some things that may have been standard when you were job searching 10, 15 years ago may not be current, or there might be some new trends that don't really make sense. So I'm going to talk about 6 things that I want you to look at on your resume, and if you have it, I'm going to suggest you remove it. So the first thing is your full address. Okay, there was a time when you needed to have your address on your resume because things were actually mailed to you. Yes, it did happen. But today, almost no employer is going to mail anything to you. Everything is going to be done through email or DocuSign. And so the need for that is no longer there. Now, when you are hired, they're going to ask for your address, and it's fine to give it to them then. They need it for their files. But when you are applying, that's no longer needed. And it actually can cause you issues. And that can happen when people make assumptions about you because of where you live. As an example, you could live in a different state than where the employer's office is. And a hiring manager may assume that that is going to be too long of a commute, that it could cause problems. Now, for you, that's fine, and maybe even I had a job that had a longer commute. It's not a worry. But people can have biases, and they can have that based on your address, or another thing could be they look it up and see how much you purchased a house or where your apartment is and make assumptions about you that way in terms of maybe even the salary that you will take. So to eliminate all of that, just keep the address off. You can just have in the US your city and state, or in Canada the province, but keep it very simple. Just let them know the approximate area, the metropolitan area if you need to, and leave it at that. The second thing I want you to eliminate is an unprofessional email address. Now, many people have a personal email address that is fun for the friends. That's good. But when it comes to a professional setting, it's just really not appropriate. And I can tell you, recruiters have tons of stories about email addresses they have seen that are head scratchers for them. Like sexy lady 69, that sort of thing. That's just not appropriate when you're looking for a job, unless maybe it was for a sex worker or something like that. So please look at your email address, and if it is not professional, you can get a new one. In fact, it may be easier anyway to have a new email address that only is associated with your job search. That way you can separate it from all your personal stuff. In going with email addresses, I also want to caution those people that have their birth year in their email address. That is not uncommon. And sometimes it's because, the name, first name, last name is already taken. And so the person puts their birth year in there as a way to have a distinctive email address. But again, you don't want to give anybody in the hiring team a reason not to hire you. And if they can deduce that you're of a certain age, that could be problematic. So make sure that you're eliminating that also from your email address. And again, a good idea to make a new one for your job search. Another thing that you need to eliminate from your resume is jargon or acronyms that no one is going to know what they are. I was a recruiter in the Washington, D.C. area, and because of that, there were a lot of people who worked in various government departments that would send their resume for jobs at my company? Well, government has a lot of acronyms that are very specific to different departments or even programs. And so they would put an acronym in, and I had no idea what it was. I would have to go and look it up because I couldn't make heads or tails of it. You never want to make the recruiter look up what the acronym is. You have to make it really easy for that recruiter. So if you're working on a specific program, either you need to write it out so that the recruiter knows what it is, or you make it generic. So as an example, within the company I worked, we had a database system that had a specific name, and no one outside of the company would have known. So if you're going to put that on a resume, because you're working on it, you might say company data system or company CRM, whatever it is, so that the reader of your resume would understand that. So acronyms and also any kind of jargon that is really specific to a company, or if you are in one industry and changing to another and the jargon is really appropriate for that one industry, please remove it. That will be much better for your job search. If you like this, I would appreciate a like and subscribe. Another thing that I would remove immediately is objective statements. Now, I recently read about a recruiter that passed on somebody because they had an objective statement. Now, I think that's really ridiculous, but it just goes to show how people think about, areas of a resume that were pretty standard, only a few years ago. So if you don't know what objective statements are, then it is a statement that used to be pretty standard on most resumes, where the job seeker would write something to explain what type of role or what type of industry they were looking for. And, that was okay, but now that we are in more modern times, there's no need for that, because that is really centered on what you need, and the recruiter doesn't really care that much about it. I mean, they do care, but they know that you're applying for their role in their industry, so their assumption is going to be that that's what you want to do. Otherwise, you wouldn't apply. Now, you can, to clarify things, put the title of the role that you are applying for on your resume, and that's an indicator to the recruiter that, yes, that is the role that you are interested in. But other than that, saying that you're looking for different industries, different roles, looking for growth, whatever it may be, that's really just not needed anymore. That's very old-fashioned, and you can eliminate that from your resume. Another thing you can eliminate from your resume is references available upon request. That used to be standard language on most resumes, and it was always at the bottom, just that little line. Well, nowadays, if you get to the point where you're going to be hired and they're going to need references, they're going to ask you for references anyway. So you'll fill out a form or something to give them the references, and that will be kind of at the end of the process. Sometimes it's a little bit earlier, but they will ask you. If they need it, they will ask you. So having references available written on your resume is really wasted space. It doesn't mean anything to anybody, and it just shows that you are not up to date with what a modern resume looks like. And speaking of modern resumes, there is something that has been relatively new to resumes that I don't think belong. And that is an infographic that is often on resumes that are columned, where there are bubbles, and the job seeker is going to put where they think their competency is on a certain skill based on how many bubbles are filled in. So if it's 5 bubbles and you put 4 for let's say a technical skill, you're saying that you're not expert, but you're very good at that particular technical skill. So you might ask, well, what's the problem with that? Well, the problem with that is that's your self-assessment, right? And are we really good about assessing how we are in a particular skill? Some people might be, but in a resume, are you going to fudge it a little bit? Yeah, probably. So I remember seeing one of these infographics. The person had given themselves a 5 out of 5 on Excel. Well, I thought that was interesting. And part of our process for hiring was we actually did an Excel test. Guess what? This person didn't meet our requirements for Excel. They actually were not a 5 out of 5 on Excel. So many recruiters will take that, kind of as a grain of salt. They'll really not even look at it at all. And so it is wasted space on your resume. So my advice to you is don't even bother. Just go ahead and take it off. So I hope this is helpful. Go check your resume. If you have any of these 6 things on it, I would immediately remove them. They're not doing you any favors. Use the space for something that is going to be impactful for the reader.